Hi, this is Sergeant Betsy Brantner Smith with the National Police Association, and this is the National Police Association podcast. I have a guest today that I've known for decades. I've known of him for longer because, among being a fellow law enforcement professional, this guest is literally the godfather of homicide. And we're going to talk all about that. He's had an extraordinary career. He has trained thousands of investigators. He's an author. He's a patriot, and he's an incredible leader. And fortunately, I'm able to bring him to you today. So buckle up and meet Vern Geberth. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Betsy.
So you retired as a lieutenant commander. And I'm going to ask you the same thing I ask every cop I talk to. Vern, why'd you become a cop?
Oh, I was mission oriented as a kid. I was a Boy Scout. I was a bugle boy in the VFW. I delivered newspapers. I was a lifeguard. I drove an ambulance. I was a security guard. Everything in my life seemed to be destined to wear a uniform. I was always wearing a uniform. And I had a desire to go into the NYPD in high school. And of course, I didn't tell anybody. When I was in college, I had my girlfriend, she knew. The only people in the world that knew what was going on was me and my girlfriend. I didn't tell my family, didn't tell anybody. And the funny part about it, I was taking business. They didn't have criminal justice back in the 60s, all right? So I was taking business. It was my third year. And the guidance counselor, who happened to be a brother, all right, because it's a Catholic college, he said to me, Mr. Geberth, you haven't picked your practicum yet. I said, oh, I have it all figured out, brother. He goes, what do you mean? I says, NYPD. He goes, what? You becoming a what? You went to college to become a what? I says, hey, slow down. You see that collar you got around your neck? That's your vocation? My vocation is the NYPD. That was it. I left in junior year because the list for the appointment to the police department looked like a December appointment. So we planned everything around that. In the interim, I was hired as a World's Fair police officer, which was terrific because the World's Fair Police Department was based on the NYPD. All the forms were the same, all the procedures were the same. The only difference, instead of UF, it said WF for World's Fair. So me and my girlfriend, we planned to get married, and we got married in October. We had a wonderful wedding. We went to Bermuda. I came back from the honeymoon, reported to my command, and found out I was laid off for the season. I said, oh my God, this is the first time since I was 12 years old I don't have a job. What am I going to do? So my wife says, well, don't worry about it. It's going to come through eventually. I'll have a job. Everything's fine. I said, no, I got to do something. So I drove a cab. I unloaded trucks. I shoveled snow. You name it. I have no ego when it comes to work. I just shovel poop. In any event, it was the season, the Christmas season, and UPS was looking for helpers for the Christmas holidays. So I signed up. So the trick was you have to be there early in the morning at 6 o'clock to be selected to be a driver's helper. So the first 3 mornings, I get there 6 o'clock. Nobody knows me. They ignore me. I go home. The third day, they were short. Somebody said, okay, we'll pick you. Well, it worked out well because the driver was so impressed. He picked me all the time. Next thing I know, I have my own truck, my own route. I'm a UPS guy. And by the end of the season, they were laying everybody off except 5 people. And I was one of the 5 they retained. Then they found out I was 3 years of college. So they wanted to send me to UPS management school. I'm not telling anybody I'm on the list for the NYPD. I go to management school. I come back. I'm going to be a manager. All of a sudden, the World's Fair calls me back up and says, hey, come on back. We're going to make you a sergeant. So I went back to the World's Fair as a sergeant. They put me in charge of liquor license inspection because I was a dopey kid and didn't know any better. So I inspected all. I never saw so many bars in my life. Every one of those pavilions had a private club for their special people who came. And then April 30th, 1965, I get my orders. Report to the police department. You're going to be sworn in. And that was the beginning. So.
That is such a fantastic story, and you've never slowed down. I think since then, certainly.
Uh,
And so you have this storied career with the NYPD, and you end up in homicide. Talk about that.
Well, before I got the homicide, you have to pay your dues. I was selected out of the police academy to be in the tactical patrol force because of my marks and my, whatever I attained to do. And the tactical patrol force at the time were the Green Berets of the police department. No aided cases, no DOAs, no traffic control, strictly crime fighting. 6 p.m. to 2 a.m., lock people up for every violation, bring the neighborhoods back, let people go out unmolested. And I had a hell of a arrest record in TPF. And as a result, I was assigned to a special plainclothes unit called the Manhattan North Nighttime Task Force. Within 30 days, me and my partner made 20 felony arrests for robberies and guns. We're going to go to the Bureau. Big deal. We're going to go to the Bureau. So I got into the Bureau, and as a new guy, I had a couple of crappy details, which is life, no problem. In September of 69, I went into narcotics. I think everybody who's an investigator has to spend time in narcotics because everybody's lying. Everybody's scheming. Your informants, you can't trust them. If you can deal with people in narcotics, you're ready to deal with the general public. So in narcotics, there was a couple of shootings. I got commendations, made a big bribery arrest, blah, blah, blah. Um, I also got a civilian complaint from some character who was represented by a Latino politician and a Black Panther witness against me. Didn't think much about it until December. Well, first, I got transferred to Harlem based on the complaint. Then I'm in the special unit, taxi truck surveillance unit, which was the forerunner of anti-crime, making arrests all over the city. It's December. My name is number 69 on the sergeant's list. The teletype comes up. I'm going to get promoted. Nope. You have an open civilian complaint. The captain was out to get me, the bastard. So I was denied my promotion. Went back to Harlem, went into robbery, and from robbery, other things. Had a fantastic off duty gun chase and shootout through Little Italy. Another story for another time. Captured guys, got $100,000 worth of diamonds, put me in for department recognition. Should have got the Medal of Valor. They gave me a commendation because they figured, oh, he's a cowboy from robbery. He probably knew about this. Oh, and he has a civilian complaint. We can't promote him. So uh, that went on. And eventually I overcame all that and I was promoted to sergeant. And as a sergeant, at first I went to a precinct. I lasted there 1 month. When they saw how gun ho I was, they drove the police commander crazy. Sent me back to TPF. TPF, once again, all kinds of exciting arrests, medals, and all kinds of stuff. I get assigned to a special investigation unit in narcotics. It was the biggest case in the city's history. It was called Operation Uncover. Involved all 5 crime families of the mafia. 2-year investigation, 29 wiretaps, 3 bugs. Of course, I couldn't study for lieutenant. I got passed by, but I got detective sergeant out of it, which is lieutenant's money. And we ended up making a really big dent into organized crime. From there to Manhattan North Narcotics. Again, major case, major case. I can't get out of narcotics. They won't let me. And then one day I made this big bribery arrest, and that's another story for another time. But what's interesting is that the lieutenant was a eunuch, a real piece of crap. He cut 2 detectives out of it so he could put himself into it. He almost blew the bribery with a stupid statement to these mafiosos. Excuse me, gentlemen, what kind of nefarious detail are we talking about? The 2 mafia guys look at me like this. I said, shut up, you stupid bastard. Anyway, I got even. He cut them out. I got him back in because when I got called downtown by the inspector, I told the inspector, you know that report that came down from that lieutenant? That's a bogus report. He cut out 2 detectives. What? You know what you're saying? I said, I know exactly what I'm saying. I gave him the names of the detectives. They came down. They got promoted. So, and of course, I made myself a very dangerous enemy. But did you ever see Heartbreak Ridge
Yes.
with Clint Eastwood? Okay. You remember Major Malcolm Powers from Supply?
Mhm.
That was this guy. This was Malcolm Power's twin brother. And I was the gunnery sergeant. Anyway, I escaped and I went into Bronx narcotics, the 7th homicide zone. And that began my homicide career.
So you have this incredible career in homicide, and you gain a reputation as a guy who goes the extra mile and has some incredible expertise at a time in our profession where homicide investigation, we were just starting to really get into the forensic side of it, and all of that. That was such an incredible evolution. And then you started to train not just within your own agency, but around the country. How did that all evolve?
Now, it evolved because I was a real detective sergeant. I was in narcotics. Am I going to walk into homicide with people with 20 and 30 years and start telling them what they should do? They already know what to do. It's my job to learn the procedure so that I can give proper supervision. And what I did is I selected what I thought were the sharpest guys in the place, and I hung out with them, and I started making notes. Whenever I was on off duty, I'd go to a library. We didn't have Google. I had index cards. And I found everything I could on homicide. There were only 3 decent books that were worthwhile, and they were old. Then I started writing articles for Law and Order. The next thing you know, I'm getting requested to write more, and I get invited to participate in the FBI National Academy. Why? Because they want to tap into my head and find out what I know. So, okay, no problem. I took all the courses they had. The only thing they had was of somebody else's cases and forensics. They were good with forensics, but when it came to tactics, they were out of the box. They just couldn't do it. So that's when I decided to write the book, and it was a lot of work. It took me 5 years to put that manuscript together. And during my time, I went to visit all the ologists, the serologists, the anthropologists, the odontologists, all the ologists. I asked for their professional papers, rewrote it in English or copies, and they said, well, you made it look too easy. I said, we don't want to do what you do. We want to find out how we can use it. And I started introducing forensics. And I'll tell you right now, when I first came into homicide, nobody was talking forensics. Okay, it was get a confession, lock them up. I said, you got to have evidence. We need physical evidence. And I started a whole different protocol with forensics. And down the line, I don't know where to go with this, but I introduced the first DNA case in New York State in 1986, 87, actually.
Well,
And it was
let's talk about that, because that was, so I was when you did that, I was a detective on my own agency, and DNA was brand new technology, and actually around the country, a lot of judges and prosecutors were like, yeah, we're not we're not going to get involved in that. And
yeah,
but
that's
you
true.
kind of rammed it through, and the rest of the profession took it and ran with it. Talk about the evolution of that.
Well, I not only introduced the case, I began involving it in my training. And the firm, I used a private firm, by the way, because I didn't trust the FBI or anybody else to do it. I used a private firm. It was a lust murder involving this woman and her 8-year-old child and a newborn. She was so viciously stabbed it went right through her womb. In my mind, that's a triple homicide, but the heathen that ran the DA's office thought it was only 2. The only evidence was blood evidence. And I knew the guy cut himself because there was a drop of blood walking out the door. So I said, we got to get that drop of blood. And we're not taking it to the lab. We're not taking it to the FBI. You're going to send it to life coats, and they're going to do the process. As a result, not only were we able to link him to the case, but it turns out it matched the previous rape murder from the year before that we never would have found. That was the power of DNA. Now, this became a big litigation case because it's New York. They litigate everything. So the 2 defense attorneys, 2 characters, I won't even mention their name, attacked the science, and they were using it as defense attorneys, but they attacked it. It came out to be a 50-50 win, half loss, but he was convicted. Those are the same 2 guys that testified in the O.J. Simpson case. I was a consultant on the O.J. Simpson case. Both sides were using my book. But DNA technology had enhanced from 87 to 94 with PCM and PGM subtypes and everything else. I don't want to get too technical with the with the DNA, but DNA is a blessing because it doesn't matter if you're innocent or guilty. DNA will tell the truth. It took the gamemanship out of the trial, and I love that.
What, Vern, what was your, I know this is a crazy question, but what's the case you're most proud of?
I hate to sound arrogant, but I have thousands of cases. I don't know which one is I'm more proud of. That each one is unique for some reason, either the victimology or the family I dealt with. Um, a couple of cases that stand out was a case when I was a detective sergeant, and everybody was writing it off as a suicide, domestic violence. The Weisenheimer that killed his wife was on the list for the police department. The sergeant on patrol was useless. The detective was useless. Everybody was just running around and saying, "There's something wrong here." I says, "Close the door. Let me examine this woman's body." And I folded her eyelids back and I saw evidence of petechial hemorrhage. I said to the sergeant, "This is a homicide, sergeant." Clear as he goes, "Who the hell are you, Quincy?" I said, "No, I'm a detective sergeant. I see evidence." And that I was proud of that case because this guy would have got away with it. Because all he had to do was get the body out of the apartment. We wouldn't have been notified till the next day after autopsy. By that time, he wouldn't have got access to his kids, wouldn't have got access to him. And so the tactics were very good, including telling this piece of crap that his 4-year-old daughter would be testifying that afternoon in the grand jury. Now, 4-year-olds testify in the grand jury? No. Can they say that they do? Yes. Why? Because I work for God, right? I can, if you can see that. All right. Also, Frazier versus Cup, a 1976 Supreme Court decision. You can use trickery and deceit. So I'm proud of that. But there's other cases. There's multiple homicides. Um, oh, one case just popped into my head. You remember the movie Hannibal?
Mhm.
The guy who fed his face to the dogs? That's my case. It comes out of my book. I had to notify Thomas Harris. I said, "What school did you go to that you don't recognize your sources?" Because I'm not going to sue anybody. I just want to correct it. So that was actually my case. Wild, wild case. So
So you end up training around the country, and I'll tell you, every detective in my area, in the Chicago suburbs, all had that sign on their desk. We work
yeah,
for God. You know, you're famous.
mm,
You're famous for that.
I've given out 90,000 of those placards across the country and the world, and it's a nice reminder of who we're doing, who we're working for. And because I was training in the NYPD, and I was going out, I'm taking my vacation time to do training so I could pay for my college tuitions for my kids. And I was getting access to a lot of cases across the country because the first thing that I had to overcome was the fact that I was from New York. I said, "Whoa, slow down. I'm not telling you how New York does it. I'm telling you how practical homicide does it," because I had to fight with my own people all the time. At one point, it got so bad the crime scene unit wouldn't respond if I was at the homicide. "Well, Geberth's a pain in the ass. He wants to do this." I said, "Why don't you use luminol?" "Can't use luminol, Sergeant." "Why?" "It's carcinogenic." I said, "Can you spell it? If you can spell it, you don't have to use it."
Explain to
So
folks what luminol is.
luminol is a chemical that enhances blood so you can see the blood patterns and traces in a crime scene. So that's just one little issue. But I
So
ended up training a lot of people, 74,000 people, according to my records.
absolutely. I mean, of course, you're a legend. That's why I'm talking to you.
No, I'm the
So
same guy I was.
fast forward to 20, let's fast forward to 2020 and 2021, and we saw homicide clearance rates in many of the large blue cities around this nation plummet.
They plummeted even before that. A lot of people got promoted into positions they don't belong. It's very upsetting when you're a professional and you watch your professional status being brought down by folks who shouldn't be there. And I'm not talking about any race, color, creed. I'm talking about incompetence. I'm talking about people who are anal, that can't think outside the box. They can't command because they can't deal with people. But you put them in that position, And they remind me of, I know it sounds funny, but they remind me of the Pharisees from Jesus' time. The Pharisees had all the rules down, but they didn't see the full picture. That's the problem. But clearance rates are going down. I've been on different programs talking about clearance rates and how many homicides an investigator should handle. And the truth of the matter is, there's a combination of factors here. After a George Floyd debacle, the police were under attack, okay, to such a degree that no one trusted the police. And meanwhile, the racial racketeers in this country were making money on this. We had a dopey vice president who went to 3 funerals. I mean, it's disgusting. But you get into 2020, I got to tell you something. I had to stop teaching my program in 2020 because of the woke generation. They would get upset with certain slides and saying, "You're going to be a homicide investigator and you can't look at the slides." They're upsetting. Well, no kidding. You ought to see it in real life. Plus, my program, I have 2 programs. The practical homicide and the sexual-related homicide. The sexual-related homicide is a very heavy duty program. There's a whole separate textbook for that called Sexual-Related Homicide and Death Investigation, Practical and Clinical Perspectives. And it is clinical, but it's real. And I'll tell you right now, I could not publish that book today.
I actually took that class, and
okay. Oh, all right.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, because it is horrifying. I don't think most people want to really understand the depravity of a certain portion of the population. And that brings me to a question, Vern, I have always wanted to ask you. You saw things that, like a lot of cops, but especially you have seen things that no human should ever have to see. And for decades you have been dealing with this, and yet you are one of the most optimistic, compassionate, kind people that I have ever met. How do you do that? What is your secret?
Well, I got a good wife of 60 years. That helps. I can
I
talk
know
to
her.
her. Yeah. I mean, she's like, that's my clinical safe place to go. I believe in God. I go to church. I pray a lot. And I believe that I'm on a mission, so to speak, to share this. I share a lot of material with people across the country. I don't keep it to myself, but I'm able to talk it out. And I've been able to clinicize a lot of this stuff. Now, truthfully, I might have dreams that I don't know about, thank God, because I don't remember. But I've had my wife tell me, after you handle that case, you were really crazy last night. You were talking to yourself. I said, "Oh, did I say anything?" She goes, "No, but I could tell you were stressed." So I explain it like this. I attribute this ability to this armor of God, so to speak, that I surrounded myself with. But the truth of the matter is, we're not ducks. Water goes off a duck's back because it's very oily. We're not ducks. Some of it has to seep through, and you have to have a channel. You have to channel it in a proper direction, and that's a secret. I don't think it's a secret. It's just what I do.
I think that that's one of the most special things about what you have done is you are unabashed in your faith. You're not afraid to talk about God. You're not afraid to talk about
No,
your beliefs.
no,
And I think that, yeah, I think that is one of the reasons that you're not institutionalized or sitting somewhere with terrible post-traumatic stress and all that. And I do wish more law enforcement personnel utilized their faith.
well, I have the oath of practical homicide that spells it out, basically, what we're supposed to do. Can I talk about God on television? Well, not on CNN, but on Fox I can. Okay, I've been on Fox a few times. I've seen you on Fox. Um, but the truth, they don't want to hear it. These folks are different. And I'm saying, you just don't get it, because we have to have a higher authority in our lives to keep us on the straight and narrow, because people basically screw up. Okay, we can't help it. We're people, right? So having some direction and understanding that we have to report to a higher authority is important. I think we all should have that.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Vern, I wish we had about 5 more hours to talk, but tell everybody where they can find you, where they can find the books and learn more about you and what you do.
Sure. I don't sell books, okay, but you can go to my website at www.practicalhomicide.com and you can find the book. You can go to Amazon and find The Godfather of Homicide, which I'm very happy, proud of. It's a legacy book for my grandkids. But I don't sell books. But I should point out that on my website, there's more than just books. Anytime I publish a paper, a clinical paper, a report, or something under research material, you're welcome to it. I wrote it to be shared by others in law enforcement, and there's a wealth of information out there. So be my guest. But do cite me. Do cite me.
Absolutely. I'll tell you what, this is one of the interviews of my lifetime. I'm so excited to finally get you on the show. And I can't thank you enough for being with us. And if you'd like more information about the National Police Association, visit us at nationalpolice.org.
Every day, the brave men and women of law enforcement put their lives on the line to keep us safe. But they need our help to continue their mission. Activist politicians, progressive prosecutors, the ACLU, and the rest of the anti-police forces receive millions in donations from extremist pro-criminal elements like George Soros and woke corporations. The National Police Association is fighting them in courts around the country, including the United States Supreme Court, defending officers who are being attacked for doing their jobs. Additionally, the National Police Association works year-round to pass tough-on-crime legislation to put and keep criminals behind bars. Consider going to nationalpolice.org and donating to keep us in the fight. Together we can win. That is nationalpolice.org.